I have 3 case studies that I'm really excited to share with you today.
Oh, he's a special case. We're studying.
They will take you from an author who has done traditional publishing, has had a roller coaster ride, and is considering getting more into self-publishing and what might be next for them. We have an author early in their self-publishing career, but who's doing one thing really right, and I think that will be transformative in the next couple of years. And then we have an author who is approaching being able to support herself with her writing and how that business model looks. And that business model looks a lot different than traditional publishing. This video will give you a great insight into what it looks like to support yourself with your writing. Now, you may or may not like it. You might love it, you might hate it. You might think, after this video, I just want to keep my writing as a side, as a passion project, a side hustle.
These are side hustles.
Maybe cross my fingers that I win the lottery and get huge someday and have movie rights and whatnot. Or you might be really excited to see what the career of a self-supporting author looks like, and that it actually is pretty attainable if you take the right steps. So first out, spotlight to Jim C. Hines and his blog post, 2022 Writing Income. What I love about Jim is he has done this since 2007, right? And so to 2022, 15 years of income statements, and he has been transparent through it all. I really appreciate this because he has done these blog posts in times when he's been doing extremely well for an author, like $75,000 a year, probably top 20 or 30% of authors at least, and years when he's not done so well. And that includes this year where I think he's below around 15,000, maybe 13,000 or so. And he's considering self-publishing after this roller coaster ride of traditional publishing. So we're gonna dive into that. Oh yeah, so says the writing brought in almost 14,000 this year. So, which is above your average full-time indie self-published author, but I think there's a lot of opportunities for him to improve on this. So, and I'm willing to bet those opportunities are going to be very different than his peak. Probably 2016 when he was making 75,000, that was probably at the peak of his writing, and probably a good chunk of that is advances. Go check out his blog and dive back into the past data if you're interested in that. Give jimchines.com some love. But I'm gonna focus just on 2022. A couple of reasons he gives for this leveling off, this falling off, is that he hasn't been writing as much. And I think this is a critical point and a critical weakness in the traditional publishing model. For the most part, when a book comes out, if things are going right, you get a lot of publicity around that particular book. And then a lot of the demand for that book just slowly levels off. And essentially how authors get their back catalog sold is that the next book, it acts as a kind of marketing for them. So if you come out with the next book in the series, maybe it grabs someone's attention and they say, hey, that looks like a cool series. I'm gonna go back and read the first one, for example. But no one's actively marketing the back catalog. So if you're not coming out with a new book, you're not getting that marketing, and your sales just level off. It's kind of like a treadmill. If you don't come out with new books, the traditional model, the traditional publishing model just doesn't work. And then there's the flip side too, which is in addition to worldwide cataclysms and his own personal issues and problems slowing down his writing, his publisher was acquired and he feels like they respond a lot slower to him. Now it could be the acquisition. It could very well be also that the less often you are getting books to publisher or pitching them ideas, kind of the slower they respond to you, and they start, their focus moves to people who are putting out more books, pitching more stuff, etc. So it could be that as well. It could be related to the first item. Downside with the traditional publishing model is when the marketing and the getting advances and accepting a new book isn't going well, it's out of your hands. It's great when they're doing the marketing and they're accepting the book and giving you advances and it's working for you, but when it's not working for you, it really sucks. Whereas if you're self-published, it sucks that you have to learn marketing and master a new skill, and it might be uncomfortable at first, but once you do have that skill, you can hit a consistent level of marketing. It doesn't mean there won't be any up and down with your books, but you'll have options for continuing to sell your back catalog and most successful books if you self-publish them in a way that you don't when you're traditionally published. So I'll get into that a little bit more later, but let's break down the income streams real quick here. So the biggest by far was novels US editions. I don't know if by novels non-US editions he just means like editions in UK or Australia, or he means, you know, translations like Spanish language. The survey of indie authors' income in 2022 that I mentioned, check that out. I have a video on that. It's great to see the averages, and I'm bringing a lot of insights from that into this video. It's worth checking out. That survey said that translations were a huge portion of income. I'm not seeing here, but maybe also his stuff is just not translated. But if you were translating it, you'd have to learn how to market not only in English, but like market to another company or get someone else to market to you. I don't know how easy that is. That survey said translations are so great for people. I'm not bullish on like this is where you start with self-publishing. Audiobooks were a huge category in the survey. I've looked through his bookstore. He does seem to have audio versions of most books. They just don't seem to be taking off. I'm not sure why that is. So I wonder a couple reasons why audiobooks might be so much lower for a traditionally published author. They're both posted on Audible, so Audible takes a cut. But if your publishing company is also in between you and Audible, and, you know, they arranged for they paid for the reader and whatnot, it might be that you just don't make a lot of money between Audible and your traditional publishing company after audiobooks are sold. And when the traditional company is removed, you have heavy one-time costs as an indie author, but then you make so much more off of your audiobooks, which tend to be like 2 or 3 times more expensive than a book, that it's just worth it, and that fundamentally changes the category. It may also be some effects that audiobooks are especially popular in lucrative categories like self-help. I could see a lot of people listening to, you know, a self-help book in the background. Like whenever I actually have to garden, I listen to nonfiction or podcast or something like that, but I don't tend to listen to fiction. Like if I really want to read a fiction book, I want to focus and I'm only doing that, I'm less likely to do an audiobook. So it might also just be that audiobooks don't work as well for fiction. Like I know some people love fiction audiobooks, and there's some great ones out there. I'm not saying there's not, but there might be a different in general purchasing behavior. An interesting thing here in the income streams is the second largest income stream is actually Patreon at $1,600. So it's still lagging quite a bit behind his US novels by about $7,000, but it's still his second biggest income stream, and it beats his self-published work, which I'm assuming is just a smaller catalog, which is one of the reasons why it's not making as much. Short fiction actually made more than audiobooks, which is a surprise, and there's an other category of $700. I don't know if that includes merch or not. Merch might be missing as another interesting thing where merchandise was a huge portion of, or one of the bigger incomes of indie published authors. And again, I wonder if that's like a nonfiction versus fiction thing. And that's probably something I'll explore more in other videos on this channel, but I'll come back to merch in this video as well. So what's next for Jim? I think he's dead on about increasing the self-publishing, and for a couple of reasons. So one of the big reasons to focus on self-published work is that you actually make more money per book. I think one author was saying they make $1 to $1.50 on traditionally published books. Most of the rest of that goes back to the publishing company. And so if you're only making $1 or $1.50, you can't really run ads. And it doesn't make as much sense to give away books for free in hopes of making more money on series when you're not making much money from the entire series anyway. And so building up your back catalog of self-published stuff that you make more money off of is a great idea, just because making more money per sale opens up business options. But the other thing is you might have some agreements with your publishing company that really handcuff you, for instance, around whether you can do promotions that give away your book for free or not, etc. It may be that it makes a lot of sense to give away the first book in a series for free, because even though people will trail off with each book, that if you get a strong contingent of people who buy the entire series, the economics work out. And there's things like that if you have more freedom to advertise your own self-published stuff, you actually get options that are not available to traditionally published authors. So build out your back catalog. Another thing that you would do is, if Patreon is your second biggest moneymaker, then I would expand that. Right now, he's got about 100 patrons at most at a 5-tier option, and there's like $1, $3, and $5 per month. $5 per month being the most popular. And his value proposition is really, he reprints old stories that he has the rights to there for free, so they get that. So they're supporting him, an author whom they love, plus getting some of his fiction as kind of like in a monthly installment. So that is fantastic. Like, that's a good value. I would probably, if the goal is to expand that, I would think about how he could add up the value so that he can get more people on it and or increase the subscription rates. Subscriptions were one of the biggest categories, and actually in some forms, probably for like the most successful writers, they were actually like the biggest single source of income for full-time self-published indie authors. So like I would lean into the Patreon, but there's another issue that the survey pointed out that I think would help him, which is focus on a platform. Now this is true in two respects, right? The survey mentioned how people that print their books on one platform versus several actually do more successfully. So these are traditionally published, so maybe their publishers is responsible by submitting it everywhere and whatnot. But I don't know where to click on this page. And this is a great example of how like less is more and focusing on a single platform might be better. For instance, what I want to click on are these cool book covers, but these book covers are just linked to like the full-sized image, all right, rather than a bookstore. These should link to your most popular platform, most popular format. And then like look at all of these links. It's like a wall of text. I don't know what to click on. And especially because like Amazon will probably have, like if you click through to Amazon, it'll probably also link to hardcover, ebook, and audio. Then just click through to the most popular format, like whether it's paperback or ebook or something like that, and let them discover the alternate versions in Amazon, right? You can cut all the Amazon links out. And then, to be honest, I would maybe hide like behind all the rest of these, like that I'm not familiar with, like Mysterious Galaxy, Schuler Books, IndieBound, or whatever. I would hide those in like other platforms or something like that link, so that if people are looking to buy stuff on another platform, they could. But like this is cluttered. I don't know where to click. Less is more. You'd probably get more sales from this page by having a lot fewer links and just having pictures that go to your most popular platform and format. So that's kind of one example straight out of the survey, but the same principle also applies, I think, to social media. So if you look at the social media up here, he's got several icons. I didn't even recognize the Tumblr one at first. Many of these platforms do not have a big following, like Facebook, a couple hundred followers, Instagram, a couple hundred followers. I don't know, how many Goodreads or Tumblr followers they have. Tumblr does not look super active. It's like a repost once a month or something like that. And so Mastodon does have 1,000 followers and does look up to date. Actually, his biggest social platform is Twitter with 14,000. I don't know whether his core audience left, whether those are all bots, so it's not worth it, or whether he left on principle because he hates Elon Musk. Man, like Twitter is a whole thing every time I talk to an author. If you want more about that, you can get my gripe by throwing a question about Twitter down below in the comments. But anyway, if I were just purely going pragmatically, and I don't begrudge him an ideological stance on Twitter, or if like Twitter isn't working out for him, whatever, like use Mastodon if that's more successful for you. But I would take what I do is put Patreon or your bookstore front and center, your money makers, right? The bookstore link is hidden down here, and it just blends in the middle of all the other links without any other thing calling it out. It should be, if you have to put it down here, at least make it be the first thing. But I would put like a button top left, colored, that, you know, draws attention, bookstore, right? If that's your primary money maker. And if the next one is like your Patreon, I would put Patreon next to the bookstore. And then the third item there I'd have is your third biggest platform. And there's two reasons why you should concentrate. One of the reasons is just like from a UI perspective, this is cluttered. I don't know what to click on, and if I click into a boring account, I'm just gonna forget about it and move on to the next subject as a casual reader or consumer of the website. But if you have a small list of like very engaging profiles or very engaging content, like a better bookstore, an awesome Patreon, a good third platform, then I'm much more likely to stay engaged. Like all of these things distract me from the accounts that really matter the most to you. It's kind of 80-20 rule. And then also for your own, like for yourself as an entrepreneur, you only have so much time in the day. And so rather than focusing on posting things to like several platforms that really aren't getting traction, if you have a good way to automate it, right, like post to several platforms at once and it really doesn't take you much more than posting to one, fine, okay, do that, but then throw the rest of those links at the bottom of the page where like the people who care enough to read are more likely the people who are going to like want you on their platform of choice. Everyone else is just going to want to see where you're most active. Anyway, and so, you know, get rid of that. And then when you have time to focus on a major platform, like focus on your Patreon and Twitter or Patreon and Mastodon, then all of a sudden you will dial up your ability to bring in new audiences a ton, because you can start making these 1% improvements on your platform of choice, like Twitter, I'm more familiar with than Mastodon, but like, you know, where you find popular hashtags, where you find big name accounts that you can engage with, you can write messages to or reply to, or be the first person to respond to their tweet, like learn their tweeting schedule and be the first person to respond on a popular thread. You know, all of those types of things can help you increase dramatically in following, learning what kind of content people engage with, etc. All of those things, 1% improvements stack and really multiply in one platform. But if you're spread out over, your energy and focus is spread out over several platforms, you never learn that. And the things you do learn are like spread over different platforms where it's not helpful, and like you just can't get critical mass. So focus, man. Focus in the platforms you're deploying your books on, especially for indie self-publishing, and focus on the platforms you're displaying and updating in social media. So that would be the huge thing. So just to recap, right? More self-published content, build out that platform in terms of like more value in Patreon, higher subscription rates and more people there, and then choose one platform to drive people to your Patreon and your website, your bookstore, etc. So that focus would be hugely helpful. And then the other thing, I don't see an email list here, but that is essential not just to every author, but to every business. But that would be another piece where probably like the pillars of his business model are going to be a better bookstore, a more streamlined bookstore, a high value Patreon, of active and engaging free social media account, and a newsletter that's kind of a mid-tier engagement, right? It's people who care enough to be willing to sign up to get your newsletter, but you know, it's not quite as engaged as paid and Patreon, and so that it's just a great audience to market to, and it's a better audience to market to than you're going to get just straight on Twitter or whatnot. It's going to be a powerful tool. It's a powerful tool for every business, and authors that support themselves or are more successful with their writing also always say like, yep, I need that email newsletter to, you know, keep continually sell my back catalog. So what will this do for Jim? This will level out his income. He'll have more income streams that don't depend on his publisher and whether or not they respond. His platform will allow him to sell his back catalog more consistently, and so that if he can be consistent with the social media and Patreon enough that his income won't fall off a cliff quite so much if he's not releasing a new novel at the same rate he used to, etc. And so that is one of the things it will do. It will also take a lot of time, right? There's several things I've mentioned, and they're all going to have a learning curve, like improving Patreon, improving your outreach on another platform, newsletter, improving your web store. All of those things will have a learning curve, and so yeah, it will take a little bit more time. Eventually, when you learn them, you'll be able to automate them and do them much faster. But it's going to be probably a struggle. Like if you're struggling keeping up with your writing, it probably is going to be hard to write and learn all this marketing at the same time. And that's where really help from a friend, even just having someone to be accountable to so that you make sure you get things done and you get the priorities done. You have set goals with a friend or a partner. If you have the money and means, like buying help from a coach or consultant, or an online course that's targeted at exactly, for instance, the platform that you want. Like if there's, I don't know if there's a Master Mastodon course, which is a great name. There should be if there isn't, right? But there might be ways that if you have the means, it is worth it to invest it, because the time to learn marketing stuff, will be difficult at first, just calling that out. So give Jim C. Hines some love. Go to jimchines.com. Check out his web store. Check out his books. Again, I love that the man has been so transparent for so long in the good years and the bad. That is a gift to authors. So give Jim some love. And our next case study, we're moving from someone who's considering moving into the indie writing space to somebody who is early on in their indie writing career, but has done at least one thing really awesome, and that is going to open up future opportunities so much. So this is Jed Herne.
I've benefited a lot from other authors being transparent about the business side of their writing, so it's my hope that this video will help you better understand how to make a living from your writing.
So check out Jed's video on his 2022 income down below and give him some love. Again, any author that's willing to be transparent with their income is a blessing to the rest of us. I'm not going to try and repeat that video. I'm going to focus on income streams, but he also talks not only about the income streams and describes them in a little bit more detail, but what he learned from them. So it's worth it to check out his video as well if you're interested in this case study. So what I see from Jed is he's making around 9K. Most of that is an advance from a interactive fiction, and that's like he has a publisher, almost like a traditional publisher, gave him an advance, and that was $5,000 about of his income. Sounds like a lot of fun. So again, check it out in the link below. That was the biggest portion. It looks like the second biggest portion of his income was actually YouTube AdSense. And this is the thing I think Jed did really right, is he's focusing on a platform and building out, like, yeah, he has an Instagram with a few hundred followers, but really he got to 4,000 subscribers on YouTube. The number of subscribers on YouTube, I think, goes a longer way than, say, Twitter followers, because they're people who are willing to sit down and watch your long form content. So like 4,000 is actually an impressive showing. It's enough to get monetized. So I think he said he made about $1,000 off of AdSense alone. And looking at his followers, subscriber account for 2023, he's 10x that, right? He's got over 40,000 subscribers. So it'd be really interesting to see if his YouTube AdSense money 10x's as well, right? Like if he makes more in AdSense this year than he did with, in all income streams last year, or at least in all writing income streams last year. And so, that would be phenomenal growth. What I'm not seeing as much are, no merch mentions, no audiobooks. He did mention that he made like a few hundred off of his books, but he hasn't really promoted them. So he mentions he's like name dropped them on his socials, so like Instagram and YouTube and whatnot, but he hasn't really come out with a new book. This kind of goes back to like in the traditionally publishing model, like a lot of the ways you drive interest in your new book, in your old books, is to have a new book coming out. And so since he didn't do a new book, he just did interactive fiction, then, you know, those continued to sell, but there does tend to be like a slump of sales with books. And so like without being very active in promoting it, their sales are probably going to fall off. What is the active in promoting it looks like? There's lots of like book promotion tools, and it sounds like he's not using them or doing like freebies, BookBub, whatever, right? Like there are those things. If he wanted that to be a bigger portion of his income, he could maximize it. So what's next for Jed Herne? Well, he has done so fantastic with his YouTube growth, growing from 4,000 last year and getting monetized, which is great, to 40,000 this year. Keep on keeping on, right? Don't lose focus on YouTube. If it's like the biggest thing you're doing most successfully, like build that first. Keep that as a core focus, because that's doing you a lot of good. But I think while 40,000 may not be the level at which he gets the self-supporting income he wants, it's a good step in that direction, and it will start to open up other income streams. And so that's a secondary thing Jed probably wants to look at. Patreon, for example, offering, you know, courses would be a good one. That's another one that people make a lot of money at. Building out that back catalog of books that people can read and buy. And then asterisks, maybe merch. This one seems a little bit shady or question marky. So I have some questions around merch. Basically, the 2023 income report said that the median income for merchandise was 40,000, making it one of the bigger income streams for full-time indie authors. Now, there's a couple things that could be going on there, because we don't see that borne out in our case study, and there's another video from MK Williams down below where she says that she doesn't see authors making a lot of money on merch until they're basically supporting themselves with their books. So one reason for this could just be that the merch self-selects for the most successful authors. The less successful authors don't bother with merch, so they don't really make a lot of money off of it. That could also be that merchandise lends itself to other genres that aren't sci-fi and fantasy or horror, right? That maybe merch pairs well with the self-help, right? If you're teaching someone to do something, it's easy to offer them tools or other aids and merch that's not the book to help them in that task. That's actually pretty natural to merchandise around. And so, like, an example of that is if you're, have a book on writing or teaching a writing course, having a novel planner or a novel marketing planner or something like that is essentially, it's not another novel that you're writing, it's essentially merch, right? And so that pairs really nicely with nonfiction. But I also have an asterisk around MK Williams' statement that she doesn't see people making a living off of merch until they've sold books. There's plenty of people that do. It's called Etsy, and that's more handmade stuff, right? But there's other people who run stores without writing books. I'd have to validate this and do the research, but as like a business coach, I would put money on more people sustain themselves running online stores with merch than people sustain themselves writing books. So like the idea that you have to have books to sell merch, I think actually seems a little backwards. I think that must assume that your merch is based off of your novels rather than you just create cool stuff that people would like even without reading your novels, right? You don't actually have to have a novel written to create a cool fantasy t-shirt or design a cool fantasy resin cast statue that people can 3D print at home, or I don't know, whatever it is, right? Whatever your merch is, that you could get into that. You could even commission an artist to do art that you have the rights to sell or something like that. And obviously if you're a writer, you want to sell merch of your novels, but I could see that merch specifically of your novels that relies on people having read your novels doesn't take off, but people sell cool fantasy merch all the time that is not related to a novel, so it can be done. but it just might not be the place for authors to start. So big thanks to Jed for his transparency. I hope he keeps up with a 2023 video and we can see if he picks up some of these income streams and how that works out for him. Give him some love. Link to his video down below. So our third case study is Beth Atazadeh, and she is someone who is well on her way to supporting herself. In the video I found from her is in 2021. She had a goal of hitting $50,000 of income for the year supporting herself, and I think she was a little shy of that at around $41K for the year, but that's not bad, and it's really interesting to see the breakdown of her income streams. It looks a lot different than somebody who's just starting out supporting themselves as an indie author. Before I dive into that, Beth's link is below. Give Beth some love as well.
And secondly, I'm going to share how much I made last year in 2021 at the end of this video and actually tell you how much I make as an indie author.
So her income streams are really almost evenly split among three sources. So Patreon edged out books barely, both at about 12K, and YouTube AdSense plus affiliate links also came in around 12K. So like between those three sources, that was about 36,000 or most of her income. It really underlines the importance of a subscription platform as part of your income if you're planning to support yourself as an indie author. So, and then books, and then a platform. Again, YouTube is a platform, and it's a great one because it's a directly monetizable platform, which she has done both with just straight AdSense and with those affiliate links, which is another way you can make money by putting links in your social media posts and YouTube descriptions to products that you mentioned, etc. So merch was negligible. We already had that rant. Asterisk, question mark, whatever. Maybe that's something I will experiment with because I'm so curious about that one, about the possibility of making that work or not. But we'll see. I'll do a future video exploring all about merch. Subscribe to get that. Anyway, so the other income stream that was interesting was a new course at the end of the year around 3K. So that she mentioned the course coming out later than she wanted. And, that's not something to sneer at, that 3K, and especially if that's only part of the year. It would be interesting to see what that would expand to the next year. I imagine it could probably, even selling at the same rate, be several times that much if it came out at the end of the year, like I think I remember her saying. So, but there's a course there. But a couple of interesting things to notice, okay? She's had to use multiple income streams. Now, typically, as a business coach, and this is the advice I've heard, and it's really good, again, the power of focus, like one product or one audience, one channel, one product kind of thing is what Alex Hormozy says, something probably in a different order, right? That like if you really want to support yourself, focus on selling one thing to one audience with one channel. And that's why I probably, as a storyteller, if I wanted to make a living telling stories, I would figure out how to tell stories on social media in a both free and gated behind Patreon format, or maybe Substack. Some people maybe, that's probably more specifically writerly. A lot of journalists do that, but maybe look into some fiction writers doing that. But I might pick that and really focus on that and at least prioritize it. But it does look, in order to make her goals, that she's dipped into a lot of different incomes, and not just different income streams like YouTube, affiliate links, subscription, as well as her books, but she's also dipped into nonfiction. So yes, she does write her fiction books, but she does a course on how to write, and she also has books that she does how to write. And interestingly, she's partnered with another writer on YouTube to write that series on how to write and market your books, which I think is clever, right? Because that partnership means that they expose. They get twice the audience, right? That I wrote half the books, but my books get twice the audience because they're in the series from this other author as well, right? So I thought that was something that's clever, probably underutilized in indie authors, is really making those partnerships to get at a broader audience is also pretty slick. So there's a lot going on. This is probably a fairly heavy load and probably a pretty near to full-time job, or maybe even more than that, for a low income. But I imagine this is going to increase. So what's next for Beth? I mean, this is now like 2021 is 2 years ago, so she does not have a 2022 video out, or at least I couldn't find it. And so that might be a signal that her income has increased to such a degree that she does not want to share it, which is very common. I mean, again, shout out to Jim C. Hines, who has been sharing his income whether it's been up or down. But what I find is a lot of authors who I can do some like back of the napkin calculations that they're doing fine don't actually share their income, so I'm not going to speculate on it. But a lot of times, basically scrappy young authors trying to get attention on their blog post or social media or video know they can do that by being radically transparent about their income, and people are really interested. When they hit a comfortable spot, they no longer feel they need to make themselves as vulnerable. Plus, they probably get a few jerks who are angry at them for making a living doing what they love, which just makes my heart hurt. And so like they shut down and stop being transparent. Maybe that happened with Beth, but that's speculation. Anyway, what I would say is, like, if her course came out at the end of the year, even without growing her platform and selling at a higher rate, if it continued to sell at the same rate, if it came out in the last quarter, it'll probably make 4 times as much, so it'll be 12,000, rivaling her other income streams. If she continues to grow YouTube, she's had excellent focus on YouTube and has really done that well. I imagine if that continues to grow, as she adds to her back catalog, I think her books will continue to sell. Affiliate links, YouTube, I think all of those will raise. And so I imagine there's, she's got some newsletters behind the scenes too. If she doesn't, that would be a great thing to add. But it's kind of more of like a keep on keeping on. Like, I imagined almost inevitably she would have crossed that 50,000 goal in 2022. I imagine the biggest chunk of income probably is the course, just because once you put that out, it's a fairly high ticket item with low cost that you can continue to grow. And again, I think it's just focus on one. If you've hit a spot where where you're comfortable and you want more freedom than more money, then cool off, right? You don't always have to chase more money. But if you want to increase the income, like really the engine of a lot of this probably is YouTube. Like, YouTube is where people find her. It's from YouTube that they're going to sign up to email lists. They're going to sign up to Patreon. They're going to buy the course. They're going to buy the books, the AdSense, etc. So like that seems like a pretty critical engine. You certainly want to at least take care of that and continue providing high quality videos to like maintain that. But you're going to want to become a specialist, and maybe at around 40,000, it's also a point at which, in order to specialize and master something to a certain degree, you might start outsourcing stuff. That's really like painful if you're not quite where you want to be at your income to like increase expenditures. But that might be more of a thing where, like, in order to free you up to make the next big leap, you have to outsource video editing or get someone's help posting, like organizing, maybe not ghostwriting all of your social media, but like organizing and doing research and whatnot for social media, especially if you have kind of like a go-to pattern for your research that you could teach someone else. That's probably something that I see happening. Probably if she wants to be independent, right? These are contractors and it's not like a paid full-time position. Certainly not at like if your total income is 40,000, you're not paying someone another full-time income, but it's the point at which something like a virtual assistant, an editor, like a video editor, etc., on contracts can be really helpful. This is a long video. Who knows? Maybe I'll like break it down and see if the individual case studies do better. But I really did want to try posting them together because there's a sequence here. You can see someone who really doesn't have the platform, who's just starting to consider being serious about self-publishing and getting into the indie platform and kind of their next steps. You can see someone who has already got the platform, is growing like a freaking rocket ship, and then, you know, what the next step is there. And then you can see someone who is just about at that self-sustaining mark and what all of the things they're doing to make that money work. What I would say in the final analysis is like, yep, it doesn't look like just selling books is probably going to be a way to make a living, right? So if all you want to do is write novels and all of this like marketing, platforming, business, subscriptions, like if that sounds like a headache to you, by all means, keep writing as your passion project. A nice little side income, doing something that you love, you know, cross your fingers that maybe something someday, you know, daydream about, you know, hitting it big someday, maybe it'll happen. But you know, I'm not saying, I'm not ripping on that. But if your goal is really to make a living being a storyteller, this is what it looks like, where you're building up these platforms and then you're adding in income streams like subscription, courses, merchandise, nonfiction, etc., to a place where you make a living doing what you want to do. It's not going to be for everybody, but if you want to, like if your number one goal is to make a living writing, this is more what it looks like. Now, as you go down that road, as you get a bigger platform and a bigger back catalog of fiction, that opens up opportunities to sit back. Maybe you don't have to keep updating courses like, you know, forever. You know, maybe at some point you know, scale back some of these social media and platform things to you know, a status quo that works for you. You figure out some automation. Like, I'm not saying that you're signing up to be a marketer primarily forever, but I am saying that if this is your primary goal, is to support yourself, probably the number one thing to focus on is learning how to build an online platform. Like, find your audience and build an online platform. Number two is find an income stream that's not books, that's faster and more lucrative, such as a subscription platform, which means producing some form of free content and some form of paid content. And this can be storytelling, right? And then lastly, using that platform to sell your fiction. And one parting last thought is that more people might have read Beth's books because she didn't focus on making money only with books, right? Because she built up this platform, because she has these subscription models and courses to support her. Around 30,000 people have read her books. Now, some of those, I think a lot of those, maybe even the majority of those are giveaways, but 30,000 people have read her book. Had she just written books and only focused narrowly on trying to sell those books, not on building the platform of free content, then creating subscriptions and affiliate links and whatnot, if she hadn't done all of that, I would bet less people would have actually read her books. So what I would say of this is a lot more work than just writing books and just trying to sell books, because you're learning a lot more about marketing, social media marketing, other income streams and platforms. It is a lot more work. It's quicker and more certain, however, in terms of making a living, and probably quicker and more certain in terms of getting more people to read your actual books. And it's certainly more effective at getting people getting a platform to tell stories. Again, your stories don't have to be in novel platform. And so if you have a platform of 14,000 or 40,000 or whatever it is, your stories could be reaching those people every day. If you made it this far, I need to hear your reaction to this video in the comments down below. Are you running away screaming from the self-publishing space and thinking like, okay, I'm actually good not supporting myself as an author. I just want to have a day job and write my novels and be good, right? Rather than worry about all this crap. Or are you excited that there is a clear known path to supporting yourself that is more reliable than you thought, even if it's a lot of work? Like, is that exciting to you? I'm kind of curious. So were there surprises in income streams or how things worked out? Let me know in comments down below. And of course, check out my next video. I referenced that survey video several times. If you haven't clicked the link below or in the videos, then go ahead and check out in the end credits where I go over some surprising stats about indie full-time authors. It's a survey of 2,000 authors and their 2022 income. So that's worth taking a look at.